Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the brand new top meta threat in the Open Great League, Galarian Corsola. Galarian Corsola is a pure ghost type Pokemon with very similar stats to Steelix. Pairing that up with an amazing moveset of Astonish, Nightshade, and Power Gem, this thing arrives to the meta as an immediate top meta contender. Now Galarian Corsola, the rank 1 is a 0-15-15. It only comes from 7km eggs, so ideally you're going to want to try and hatch and then trade to get optimal IVs, as optimal IVs pick up a ton more wins than, for example, the bad IVs that I built to test it out for this video. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Galarian Corsola absolutely destroying the Open Great League meta. Hopping into the first match, leading Galarian Corsola into Azumarill. Azumarill, a very bulky top meta threat that is very strong in neutral situations. However, all Galarian Corsola does is win all even shield scenarios if you do have a high rank Galarian Corsola. So right off the bat, this thing can go toe to toe with the current top meta Pokemon and just beat them neutrally. Opponent's gonna save switch to Dugong. I have a great response, so I can bank some energy on the Corsola and send in Primeape. Primeape, I was ecstatic to actually get a high rank shiny. I feel like every community day the shinies I get are always terrible IVs, but I was finally able to get one that has good IVs. Here I full send the close combat, it's going to connect and down goes Dugong. In comes Azumarill and I actually get the double up Rage Fist thanks to the very high IVs on the Primeape. Now 2 Rage Fists are not going to be enough to KO, but it is going to get the Azumarill very low, and this now sets up the Alolan Sandslash. Now for this team, if you try it, I would run the regular Alolan Sandslash with Powder Snow. Unfortunately, my Powder Snow Alolan Sandslash is currently stuck on Bulldoze, and I don't have the TMs to TM it over to Drill Run, so I'm using a Shadow one with Shadow Claw. Here, I'm up energy in the mirror, so the opponent is forced to call a bait. There's no reason for me ever to bait, so I'm able to take the win. Tough lead in the next match, Galarian Corsola versus Morpeko. I save switch into the Primeape. Opponent is going to counter swap in Azumarill, and this is a matchup where Primeape does win the 2 shield. So if I really want to, I can make a play and flip switch. However, my opponent was very smart here. They banked energy on the Morpeko before switching out. And this means if all shields get down, then I have some unshielded Aura Wheels in my future, and that is never a fun time. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the ones. I go for the close combat as it would be enough to pick up the knockout. I try and make another close combat, but my opponent is not going to let me get there. So I'm going to lose switch. But I'm going to go for a hard farm down with the Alolan Sandslash, as this energy will allow me to do very well against Morpeko. So I can tank whatever they're throwing here. It is going to be the Play Rough. They're going to switch into Morpeko, and there's the Aura Wheel. I should have just under-tapped the move anticipating the switch in, but unfortunately, my opponent does make a pretty nice play there, and they're able to force the final shield. So I fire off the Drill Run. They're going to let that through. In the back, they have Feraligatr, and this is just game over. Now you might be thinking, I have a ghost type on the lead. They have a Shadow Claw user. What if I told you Galarian Corsola neutrally beats Feraligatr, despite Feraligatr hitting for super effective damage? If you have high rank Galarian Corsola, you do win the 0s and the 1s. As you see here, I shrug off the Hydro Cannon, Astonish plus Nightshade KOs, I farm down the Azumarill, and this thing is just absolutely absurd. We move to the next match, Galarian Corsola versus Gastrodon. Mud Slap is incredibly strong. Surely Gastrodon has a favorable matchup here. Well, unless Gastrodon is double baiting in the 2 shield, Gastrodon actually loses this matchup. Here, if I correctly shield up the nuke, I can just Astonish down after landing a Nightshade. Water Pulse is going to land, they're going to save switch to Dugong, and now I get to respond with the Primeape. They have quite a bit of energy here, so I will go for a Rage Fist bait, but my opponent makes a nice call. They do end up calling the Rage Fist, so now, unfortunately, that's a bit of a waste of energy on my part. My attack is now sent back to normal, and I will be going for a slight undercharge on a Rage Fist and a farm down, because I do want to exit with energy. So I go for the undercharge, it sets up a 2 Karate Chop farm down, and this means that I leave with a boosted Rage Fist for the Gastrodon. Now Gastrodon will have to shield, because if they don't, it's just going to knock out. In the back is Alolan Sandslash, and this game is over. Now they're up a shield and up energy, so how do I win this? I go straight Ice Punch. They'll know it's a double resisted move, so they'll want to no shield it, but that does a useful amount of damage. My win con doesn't involve forcing their shields. My win con is farming them down, so getting that bit of damage is helpful because Galarian Corsola is not in a range where a Shadow Drill Run will KO. So my opponent will get to KO the Sandslash, but they need 2 moves to KO the Corsola, and they're not going to get there. So I can just bring in the Corsola, fully farm down, and take the win. And we are just absolutely frying with this Mon. And now we get a type advantage lead. Oh my goodness. Corsola into Annihilape. Opponent save switches into a Azumarill. And I am going to get to respond with the Alolan Sandslash. Now this is a situation where having Shadow Claw on the Sandslash is better. More often than not, Powder Snow is going to be preferred. Especially because there's some Pokemon that Galarian Corsola really doesn't like to see. A lot of normal types like Dunsparce, Diggersby, and Powder Snow on Alolan Sandslash is a lot better there. Here, my opponent is going to end up making it to a move. Unfortunately, they were not in Drill Run range, so I couldn't throw the Drill Run just yet. I'm going to go for an Ice Punch here and then go for a Farm Down. This way, I get to exit with the Drill Run, and a Drill Run will do quite a lot of damage. There, I wait to take the extra damage, so now I'm as low as possible. They bring in a Togetic, and they might think that I blind click Drill Run here, but I looked at the top right, I saw the typing, I get to land that damage, and now I'm just going to bring in the Corsola. Corsola is going to be hit with neutral damage here as they start spamming out the Aerial Aces, but even my terrible IV Corsola, and I can't stress enough, this Corsola is awful IVs. I would not recommend building these IVs. I would hold out until you get a good one, because it is a Pokemon that requires a lot of XL candy. I can just tank Aerial Aces for days, I can just fully farm down, and what is this poor Annihilape gonna do? There's nothing it can do. They're not countering me down. I'm a ghost type. So I get to land the Nightshade. We get the farm down. And for that game, we don't even need Primeape. Nightmare lead in the next match. This is the hardest meta answer for Galarian Corsola. I save switch in a Primeape. Opponent responds with a Drapion. And that is not a response to Primeape. I'm going to bait with the Rage Fist because I know even if they call it, Primeape does win the 2 straight Rage Fist. And I'm far enough ahead on energy that I can actually just go straight close combat and win the 2s from here now that I did successfully bait once. So I will fire off the close combat, trying to punish a no shield, but my opponent is going to commit the second shield. Now this will be quite nice because they're energy dry, which means they're 4 off their move, but I'm 4 off the close combat, so I get to completely neutralize the Drapion. So far the opponent has had so many counters to Corsola. They're going to bring in the Diggersby, and that's nice energy awareness by my opponent, as they will go for the Fire Punch before I am able to make a move. This is a little bit awkward. This is where having Powder Snow would be a lot better for the Sandslash. Sandslash, I'm going to farm up quite a bit and then fire off the Ice Punch. Ice Punch is going to land. I'd love to catch a Fire Punch, and I do just that, predicting their overfarm and getting a catch of that Fire Punch. And now they're low enough that Corsola can actually handle this. In the back is more Pekko, so they do technically have 3 Galarian Corsola counters on their team. They have Diggersby, a normal type, and 2 dark types. They're going to go for a Psychic Fangs and turn into a dark type now. Well, they stay the same typing, but their Aura Wheel is now a dark type is what I meant. But look at the damage we can do to this thing. Or Pekko without shields is unfortunately not having a lot of staying power, and this is going to allow me to get a farm down with the Sandslash. I'm not in a range where Fire Punch will KO, so even though it's double super effective, I can tank the Fire Punch, make the Ice Punch, and this game is going to be a win. So even though they had 3 counters to Galarian Corsola, we're still able to win the game. Moving to the next match, leading Galarian Corsola into Malamar. This is a core breaker for the team, as Malamar, of course, does have a super effective Foul Play for the Corsola, super effective Psywaves for the Primeape, and a double super effective Superpower for the Sandslash. Foul Play is going to land, and even my bad IV Corsola tanks that quite well. I will return fire with a Nightshade, grabbing the shield, in comes Primeape, and let's start ramping up with some Rage Fist. This is an awkward health range, where if I go for a Rage Fist and they no-shield it, it's not really a farm down range, but I am still going to go for it here. Opponent is going to call it as they should, and I'm just going to shield and go for a farm down. They actually try for a Rage Fist catch onto Drapion, but they're unsuccessful, and now I get to launch a boosted close combat. They barely hang on with 1 HP because they are a regular Drapion instead of the more common Shadow. Aqua Tail will KO, but I can bring in the Corsola, and Corsola will now get a little bit of an energy head start. So I do get that 1 Astonish. In the back is going to be a regular Fortress, an incredibly cool pick. I send in the Sandslash. Sandslash is going to be firing off the Drill Run. Drill Run is going to be shielded by my opponent. Now, this is a bit of an interesting endgame. I know they do have energy on that Malamar. I do shield as they go for the Earthquake. I'm farming up, opponent waits and catches, but this is better for me. They had energy on that Malamar, so they get a nice catch, but honestly, I was way more scared of the Malamar energy because Sandslash is going to win the CMP tie over that Fortress. And my opponent, unfortunately for them, kind of threw away the win con by making a catch onto that Malamar. The Malamar had some very valuable energy, but instead they end up losing it. Corsola farms down, and this team just will not stop winning. Corsola into Primeape. This is a good lead for the Corsola. Opponent save switches into Feraligatr, and I can stay in with the Corsola. Opponent does end up throwing on alignment here. Hydro Cannon is going to connect, and I can survive that and return fire with a Nightshade. Again, if I had a higher rank Corsola, and I fully intend to build a higher rank Corsola in the future, then I would be in a much better position, as of course, I would have a lot more health left. So I do definitely recommend, once you hatch one, trying to trade it with people who are low friendship friends, because that way there's the lower IV floor. Here, I CMP tie with the Rage Fist, so now I get to be a boosted Primeape coming out of this matchup. In comes a Talonflame, and this is going to be fun. I have back-to-back boosted Rage Fist here. Rage Fist is going to land, firing off another Rage Fist, and I believe this should be enough to knock them out, and that'll just win me the game. Rage Fist leaves them on 1 HP. I panic, and I catch onto the Corsola, and that's not what I needed to catch on, because now my opponent will have an ability to catch. They can stall out the timer here, and if they catch, I auto-lose, and there's the catch. Very well played by my opponent. That's a game that I should have won. But in the end game, my opponent made the winning play, so unfortunately, that's just a loss. Galarian Corsola versus Clodsire. Clodsire, a bulky monster that is an absolute beast when shields are down. Galarian Corsola wins the 0s and the 1s. I believe it's only the 2s that Clodsire is able to win. Again, these sims, I'm talking about a high rank Corsola. My Corsola, not the highest rank ever. My opponent is going to save switch into Azumarill, and I get to respond with the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash farming up, looking to connect with a Drill Run. And as I mentioned a couple times, I am going to look to build a higher rank one once I do have the ability to do so. So after you get one, or even if you have the regular Corsola, they do use the same candy. So just put Corsola as your buddy and start walking it, because you're going to need these XLs. This thing is unbelievably strong. Drill Run will connect. It's not enough to KO, so the Azumarill is actually able to win the 0 shield here. I bring in the Primeape, and I get a 2 Karate Chop head start. In comes the Clodsire, farming up with the Primeape, and the opponent is going to be firing off a Sludge Bomb. That's very okay by me. Unfortunately, this is not Rage Fist range. Close combat might be enough to KO, but I don't really want to debuff myself. Instead, I would rather just go for the Rage Fist and start boosting up my attack. Here, I am going to overfarm and play to the CMP tie. Rage Fist to this Clodsire is going to be shielded, and now I'm double boosted, and I have a bunch of residual energy. So I can potentially threaten a farm down. Opponent is going to send in Feraligatr, and it's over. We already know that Corsola absolutely thrashes Feraligatr. Boosted Rage Fist forces the shield. In comes the Corsola, and this Nightshade is basically going to do all their HP. So Nightshade puts them deep into the red. Opponent should have thrown after 2 there, because then my second Astonish wouldn't have registered, but realistically, the game was over regardless. They're 2 away from the move. I get the Karate Chop farm down, and now my opponent realizes there's not a way to win, so they will concede the match. Bad lead in the next match, Galarian Corsola versus Drapion. I'm going to save switch into the Primeape, and my opponent is going to stay in here, and they're going to fire off the Aqua Tail. This is the non-Shadow Drapion, which means I don't believe I can win the 2s just going straight Rage Fist. I build up to the close combat. Opponent calls the bait. That is a nice call from them, because since I'm switch locked for so much more time, it'd be pretty illogical to go for a close combat, so it is a pretty nice read from my opponent, and now I can start firing off boosted Rage Fist. The boosted Rage Fist is going to be able to grab a shield from my opponent. Since my opponent threw first, denying my full sneak, I'm always going to be a fast move behind in this matchup. I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Rage Fists and CMP tie. My ideal plane of existence here is they shield this, because then I could get farmed, but instead they let it go, and they're going to bring in a Moltres. This is a heavily boosted close combat, so they will shield. Another situation where Powder Snow on the Sandslash would be better. I am going to look to connect with an Ice Punch. So far, I've seen 2 very strong counters to the Corsola. Surely, their final Pokemon in the back is something that Corsola can beat. Brave Bird is going to connect. I send it to Corsola. It's a Dunsparce in the back, and unfortunately, I was able to beat triple Corsola counters once, but I can't beat it a second time, so I will concede the match. Galarian Corsola versus Malamar. Look at the Astonishes. If there was ever a Pokemon that was going to get Astonish nerfed, it's this one. This Pokemon is outrageously strong, and I'm saying that having only tried a terrible IV Corsola. Corsolas get far bulkier than this. My opponent is going to make it to the foul play, so they will win the zeros, but I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to get farm on Primeape. So Primeape now has a 2 Karate Chop head start. In comes Talonflame, and let's start ramping up this damage. Firing off the Rage Fist. Rage Fist, of course, not going to do a ton of damage here. And matchups like these where we're having a very high rank Primeape is very, very nice because I'm able to survive this next Incinerate when they throw it as long as they don't Flame Charge. Most should not have it though. So I will commit the shield. Opponent is going to send in Clodsire and I respond with the Sand Slash. Another situation where having Powder Snow would definitely be preferred. So Ice Punch is going to connect. They're farming up a ton of energy and I think I do see a win con. I just have to get shields down. So I will shield up the Earthquake as that does a ton of damage. I'm going to farm up and go for the Ice Punch. Ice Punch will be enough to deliver a knockout here. And this way, it almost forces their hand to shield. I'm trying to sweep with the energy that I have on Primeape. I think I can KO everything with close combats. So I'm going to farm up until 1 off the back-to-back because I know Talonflame doesn't have a move. And Karate Chop's only 2 turns, Incinerate is 5, so the Incinerate damage won't register until I make the close combat. So I make the close combat, it KOs the Talonflame, and we're able to escape with a win. All in all, Galarian Corsola arrives to the meta day 1 as an immediate top 3 best Pokemon in the Open Great League. The way to obtain it, as I mentioned earlier, is via 7-kilometer eggs. So if you're wanting to get Galarian Corsola, these are the steps that I'd recommend. First of all, in the interim, before you have one, if you have a regular Corsola, put it as your buddy. It's only a 3-kilometer buddy. You can start working on getting the XLs. Because at level 50, well, the rank 1 is at level 50, so it does need quite a bit of XL candies. And then, once you do hatch one, try and find a low friendship friend and try and re-roll them into getting optimal IVs. Because the bulkier Corsola that you can get, the better. And as I mentioned, the rank 1 is 0, 15, 15. So if you can get close to that, then you're going to have a nearly unkillable dead coral reef. So this thing, I mean, it's unbelievable. I had terrible IVs and it was still absolutely slaughtering. But since it is a pretty heavy investment, I'm going to be remaking one once I do get a better IV one. But in the interim, I definitely recommend trying to accumulate those resources and work towards getting the XL candies and the IVs needed to build a high rank one, because this thing is absolutely unbelievable. And once people have access to it, we're going to be seeing it absolutely everywhere. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.